Hi, I am your science teacher. Let me guide you in using 5 learners material in Science 9, published by the Department of Education, Region 4A, Calabarzon. Our lesson for 2 weeks is all about transport of nutrients in the respiratory and circulatory system. We will find out how the respiratory and circulatory systems work together to transport nutrients, gases, and other molecules to and from the different parts of the body. For respiratory system, you will learn the parts of the human respiratory system, how gas exchange and transport of nutrients happen. You can match airflow and blood flow during ventilation and learn the securing and guarding in the respiratory tract. Likewise, in circulatory system, you will be familiar with the parts of the circulatory system. You will also know more about the functions and mechanisms involved in it. You will also find out some injuries and diseases that can affect the circulatory system and ways by which we can take good care of this system. Let's start by studying the coordinated parts and functions of the organs of the respiratory and circulatory system that will aid in the transport of nutrients, gases, and other molecules to and from the different parts of the body. In humans and other animals, the necessary nutrients, gases, and liquids are transported in the body through the blood. Blood is carried through the body via blood vessels. There are 3 blood vessels in the human body. These are the vein, the artery, and the capillary. Let me show you a video presentation about the blood vessels.
In our last video, we introduced the circulatory system and saw how the heart acts as the system's pump. In this video though, we'll take a closer look at the blood vessels, specifically the arteries, capillaries, and veins. To quickly summarize, the arteries carry blood away from the heart. The capillaries exchange nutrients and oxygen with the tissues, and veins carry the blood back to the heart. As you take a closer look at each, the key thing to notice is how the structure of each type of vessel is related to its function. As arteries carry blood directly from the heart, the blood inside them is going to be at really high pressures, because it's just been pumped out of the ventricles. In order to bear these high pressures, the arteries need to be both strong and elastic. And to achieve this, they have a thick layer of muscle tissue to keep them strong, and a thick layer of elastic tissue so that they can stretch and recoil. These 2 layers though mean that the wall of the artery is quite thick when compared to its lumen, which is what we call the hole or space in the middle of the vessel. Once the arteries have transported the blood to the different parts of the body, it enters the capillaries. These vessels are really small and come into close contact with all of the cells in our body. Their role is to exchange substances with our cells, giving them useful nutrients and oxygen, and taking away waste products like carbon dioxide. If we take a closer look at a single capillary, we can see how they're adapted to this function. For example, their walls are only a single cell thick, and they're also permeable, which means that substances can easily diffuse through them. Because they're so tiny, the lumen of an individual capillary is also tiny. But there are so many of them that their total cross-sectional area, which is just the area of all the capillaries added together, is actually huge, far higher than for arteries. This means that the pressure of the blood is much lower than in the arteries, and so it flows more slowly, which gives the blood time to exchange things with the tissues. Finally, these tiny capillaries start to join up into larger vessels called veins, which transport the blood back to the heart. Veins are relatively large, with by far the biggest lumens of any blood vessels. They also have relatively thin walls, with only small layers of elastic fibers and smooth muscle. This works fine though, because the blood that they carry is at very low pressures, so the walls don't need to be very strong. The important thing to remember about veins, though, is that they have valves, which prevent blood from flowing backwards, ensuring that it always flows towards the heart. Before we finish, let's quickly cover how to calculate the rate of blood flow. A typical question could look something like this. 2,560 ml of blood passes through the aorta, which is the big artery that leaves the heart, in 8 minutes. Calculate the rate of blood flow through the aorta in milliliters per minute. So in a question like this, we would just divide how much blood has flowed, so 2,560, by the time it took, so 8 minutes, which gives us 320 milliliters per minute. And that's all for the blood vessels. If you haven't seen our other videos on the heart and the blood yet, we put the links for those in the description below. Otherwise, cheers for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Based from our video, we can compare the arteries and veins. First, in the direction of blood flow, the arteries conducts blood away from the heart, while veins conducts blood toward the heart. In general appearance, arteries are rounded while veins are irregular and often collapse. Arteries have high pressure while veins have low. Arteries are well thick while veins are thin. In relative oxygen concentration, arteries are higher in systematic arteries but lower in pulmonary arteries, while veins are lower in systematic veins but higher in pulmonary veins. There are no presence of valve in arteries but present in veins, most commonly in limbs and inferior to the heart. So the materials needed to answer all the learning tasks in this module are first, big notebook and ball pen. Learners, you are expected to write your answers in all activities to your big notebook. I'll show you some samples later. Another are scissor, tape measure, and oat cloths for your DIY face mask. So I'm expecting everyone to submit the outputs on time and date we agreed upon. For our first learning task, you're going to copy and write your answer in your big notebook. Study the diagram of the human respiratory system. Identify the parts of the respiratory system. Copy the diagram and label the parts correctly. Choose from the words listed below. Please be guided with our example for the first learning task. You're going to draw the human respiratory system and label each part. Again, for the second learning task, we're going to use your big notebook. We will be using the diagram showing the exchange of gases in and out of the cells. So you're going to copy and complete each statement. Please be guided with our example for the second learning task. For the third learning task, again, we will be using your big notebook. You will construct a Venn diagram to show the similarities and differences of respiratory and circulatory system using the descriptions below. Please be guided with our example of Venn diagram. Another learning task will be written in your big notebook. Each of the following goes with inhaling or exhaling. You're going to place a check mark in the box where you think each statement belongs. Please be guided with our example. For the fourth learning task, again, we're going to copy and write your answer in your big notebook. There is handout about heart and blood circulation in your module. Please read it Then answer the following questions. Please be guided with our example for the fourth learning task. For the fifth learning task, we're going to conduct an activity entitled Face Mask Design. Follow the procedures and answer the questions from the activity sheet in your big notebook. This is what you will write in your big notebook. Please be guided.